as we're going to tackle something that a lot of us are starting to use: Microsoft Teams, List, Power Automate, better together. I know, Norm, they just have a new name again. Is it Dataverse now with Power Platform?
It's an interesting, never-ending saga, it would seem, but I think they've settled in on Dataverse for Teams, which was Oakdale, and Dataverse, which was the Common Data Service, or CDS.
There you go. Now, before we jump right into it, I would love to introduce Norm. And Norm, make sure you flip your monitor, because we're seeing the presenter screen here. So for those that don't know Norm, Norm is an Office App and Office 365 Service MVP based out of Toronto, or the Greater Toronto area. And he works as the Director of Collaborative Analytics at Unlimited Viz, the makers of tyGraph. If you're not familiar with tyGraph, you got to check them out. They provide lots of great stats, and especially when Christian Buckley does his collab talk, a lot of great stats that come out of that. And he's been focused on SharePoint, the Power Platform, and shares a lot of his passion through his blog and speaking. In his past life, he worked at a lot of the different education sector. I'm sure he can share more about that. But he's from Toronto, like I said, and he lives with his wonderful family, his wife, and 2 kids. So with that, Norm, all yours.
Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. And I want to talk about Teams, Lists, and Power Automate as they're better together. But if we rewind the clock back to March, we will know that we've had colleagues, friends, family, loved ones who were thrust into the cloud and Teams, and they've had to respond to this work from home, this pandemic, this new way of working. And yes, they were able to adopt chat and meetings using Teams, but some of their processes were left behind. And this is what I want to talk about, and this is what I want to highlight in the short time that I have with you today, is to show that we can digitally transform manual processes using things like Teams, Lists, and Power Automate together as a platform. And we will create a modern online solution where the resources are centralized and manual tasks are automated. All of this is out-of-the-box functionality, and we always take a no-code maker approach to these types of digital transformation. So when there is no app for that, we're going to use Teams, Lists, and Power Automate. And so our scenario is based on one that I encountered numerous times in university. It's a university exchange agreements program, and the process is managed by a single user using an Excel spreadsheet on their desktop PC. And unfortunately, agreements have accidentally expired in the past, and this is a 100% manual process with zero insight for others. And the catalyst for change is that these agreements have been taken over by a team. The team is new to Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365, and so they need the ability to have reminder messages ahead of those agreements expiring, so they have an opportunity to start the renewal process prior to the end date. They also want to share this new workload and have different owners. And the team also wants simple inbound, outbound student headcounts and the ability to quickly view some of these expired agreements. This doesn't have to be a higher ed focused demo. The point is to show how you can take a lot of the good work that comes from people's own organization using Excel and move it into something like Lists. We can see that we're adding the Lists app into Teams, and we're going to use this powerful feature called Create Lists from an existing Excel spreadsheet. The app is able to understand the data. We can set the different types of data types that would be associated with our columns. We'll look to use things like choice to get data consistency, date to have proper dates, things like this to make life easier. We will click create, and all of a sudden we've taken what was once a manual process hidden on someone's desktop, we've moved it online, we've made it available. We have access and insights into this. So I'm going to jump into SharePoint now, and I'm going to start updating the list from Excel to make it more something that will suit our needs. First thing I'm going to do is to create a simple status to let them know where they are in the business process. And I'm using the new column feature, and it has this amazing column formatting experience right out of the box. If we rewind 6 months ago, you would have to do this with JSON code, and it is not the most user-friendly thing if you're just a normal user. I'm also highlighting the grid view where I'm able to jump in with Excel-like features and update the data. And you'll see I'm deleting the owner column, and I'm doing that because when it imported, it was a simple line of text. It does me no good down the road to have a simple text with someone's name. So I've converted it to a person column. And the person column has all of that Active Directory information embedded to it, and that's going to be critical for us for leveraging down the road in Power Automate. So I've created the new column out of a person data type, and I've backfilled it. And now we see these other columns called total students and balance. These are clearly simple math equations that are being manually applied, but we can do better with SharePoint and lists, and we can create something called calculated columns. So I've deleted those columns, and now I'm going to manually create this. Everything that we're seeing will be out of the box. There's going to be hardly anything that would ever be considered code. So these calculated columns, very simple in the illustration that I'm showing here, where it's inbound plus outbound. Yet more complicated measures can be done. And the idea is to start to gain efficiencies for our users by understanding their business process. And we turn this into a game of inches and not yards. We are looking for those marginal gains wherever we can as proponents of our users using this technology. This is 10 minutes where we've been able to bring the data online, centralize it in Teams. And so now I want to do things like visually indicating data that's important. So I'm using this conditional column formatting, and I'm creating a business rule that will say, if the end date is before today, let's visually highlight it. And so I'm going through all these formatting features, not to make them pretty for the sake of being pretty, but to draw visual attention. When my users come to this list, when they come to this solution, I don't want them to think about what's important. I want to show them what's important. And so I can do other things like using the counts to give them those simple calculations that they're yearning for. I didn't have to create anything, and I'm simply using out-of-the-box functionality. We're halfway there. We're going to jump into Power Automate, and we're going to let automation do some of the heavy lifting for us. So if you're not used to Power Automate, I'm creating a flow right now. This particular one is based on a schedule. It's going to run every day, and it's going to be based on the data in our list that's sitting in our team, which is our new digital home for our users. So you will notice I'm using the SharePoint actions and connectors and so on in Power Automate. SharePoint and lists, well, lists are SharePoint, so we just use those connectors. I point it to my site, I point it to my list. This is probably the second most complicated thing that I'll do in this demo. It's called a filter query, and I'm simply saying where the end date is less than or equal to this expression, and this expression is called UTC now. I'm just saying, give me today's date. This is as complicated as it gets in this 10-minute digital transformation. I am not exaggerating. I have done this numerous times in higher ed, and it has been so valuable because I'm taking the user's work and I'm putting it in the context of where they work, and I found opportunities to add value, and I know that you can do it as well. The next piece we want to do is to update those existing list items where that status is no longer active and now it is expired. So I go back to my list and I say, let's update everything that we pulled from the previous query. And we're seeing that now it jumps into a loop, and you also see me renaming all of the actions, and I'm doing that so I don't get lost in all the different actions. I'll scroll down, I'll find status value, I'll set it to expired, save that off, and we'll run a test, and then we'll hop into the list and we'll make sure that we're actually doing that work. The value here is our users didn't have to compare the dates. They just go in and they will see that the status has now expired. Let's hop over to our list, and boom, we see that the status is expired where it should be. Visual attention, manual work is being performed through automation. Let's do another one, but this one will be more important. This one will allow us to give our users the opportunity to intervene before things expired. Knowing things that have expired after the fact doesn't do you any good. Giving a chance to get ahead of time, creating a reminder like we're doing now, this is value, and this is what we're trying to drive through these transformation using these tools. Don't expect my users to know how to do all of this stuff, and neither should you. So if we can advocate, if we can spend that 10 minutes, that half an hour, that hour to build out a solution like this, perhaps it's not Teams, perhaps it's SharePoint, wherever their digital home is in this new reality, find it, bring the work there. The reoccurring themes are understand the business process and add value where we can. This is the second most complicated function that we see, And again, I added 30 days to today's date in that expression if you didn't follow, and that's okay that you didn't. And so now I'm going to run a quick test to make sure that I have an example date here. And so we'll see that I'm looking for January 6, 2001, and I do have a value there. So my next test that I'll do, which will be delivered through the Teams mechanism, will actually register. So the first thing I want to do is get the @mention name of the user that's responsible for this particular agreement that has expired. So I'm plugging in the owner email from the list, and I'm using the get @mention token user for Teams. The Teams actions in Power Automate are expanding on a very frequent basis. There is an excellent investment there. What you can't do with out-of-the-box connectors, you can do with Graph API. If I can figure out Graph API as a non-technical or a non-developer person, I believe that you can as well. Out-of-the-box functionality is great. There's so much to do here. So now I'm going to post a message as the Flowbot to the channel where our team is working, and I'm saying, hey user, or the owner of the agreement, and a simple message. The exchange agreements have expired. But the nice thing about Power Automate is when you're crafting these messages, we get to use the dynamic data that we're pulling from the list. So yes, I'm adding a hyperlink piece of code. I'm putting in a link to the item. I will give it a very friendly username, or sorry, business name to it, and then we'll test that. That message will come out to the user if all goes well. And this will be one of those things where we've taken another marginal gain, and perhaps we've bought 5% for our users, maybe 10% back for our users on their annual time expenditures. And that's where the value of these tools come. These tools are not meant to replace ERP systems. ERP systems, large enterprise applications, they leave these small business processes behind because they're not deemed to be as valuable to the larger enterprise or the organization as it is to those little business units, because they can run through it and they can do that manual work to get it done. So we've run our test, boom. We've got our notice to Megan, the owner, and she has an opportunity now to intervene in that process and hopefully fix it before it breaks. So what did we do? We updated those text columns to choice, allowing for consistent data entry. We added a status and owners column to show the current state of an agreement and assign ownership to the renewal process. We switched owner to the person column, and that gave us opportunities for automation using Power Automate. We used calculated columns to automate very simple calculations, and we formatted columns to provide visual cues on expired agreements. So we understood that business process and we found opportunities to add value. Power Automate was used to identify and make agreements expired. Power Automate will send reminder Teams messages to the owners 30 days out from expiration, importantly, giving them that chance to renew before the deadline. We let Power Automate do the remembering and the updating. In this 10-minute session, I hope that I've shown that Teams, lists, and Power Automate can be used to digitally transform manual processes into a modern online solution where those resources are centralized and the manual tasks are automated. My name is Norm Young. Thank you for watching. Back to you, Ducks.
Thank you, Norm. That was amazing. And I'm sure once this is all recorded, we'll make it available to everybody. But boy, I've learned so much from that as well. So as you can see, friends, the Microsoft 365 platform is so powerful. There's so much you can do. And like Norm mentioned, you don't have to be a developer or a coder. You can do it.